It's Disorganized play. Yeah. I was hoping. I have to turn my computer off. Yeah. So that was creepy. Hey, everybody. I am your host. I am Tom Lommel. I am back from my near month-long hiatus from the wild and woolly world of streaming. Clearly, I will need to get up and get a beverage here at some point soon, but I wanted to get the stream started because we were running a little bit late, and I wanted to make sure that you all knew that was still happening after nearly a month off. So welcome back to all of our regulars. Thank you, Farquad, for showing up and modding for us this fine and sunny California afternoon. I hope you are all well. I hope you've all had a great April, and it's now time for May. It's now time for Disorganized Play. We've got a bunch of new stuff. It's a whole new season of Disorganized Play. This season we are taking on Tales of the Yawning Portal. Tales of the Yawning Portal, the new Wizards of the Coast Mega Dungeon Extravaganza, if you will. The update, 7 famous dungeons from throughout the history of Dungeons & Dragons have been compiled into one enormous volume, which I do not have at hand. So how do you like that, potatoes? How do you like them smackatoolies? Let me get my drink. I'll be right back. But look, I have, I put some new graphics together. It's over here. We've got a whole new agenda, and we've got some exciting stuff that we're going to talk about. I will be right back. Shiny Poke Epic. Happy birthday to you, number 22. Well, so be it. All right. I have a lovely beverage, which I will be indulging here. Mineral water? I don't know. It's the only thing cold. So that's what's going on. So welcome, everybody. Glad to have you back. Thank you so much for joining me. It's been a little hiatus. We have some exciting things happening. Let's talk about today's topics. We're talking about Ironkeep Chronicles. What is that? Teen drama. Starter bonds. Hacking wildlings. Musings on our premise. And looking for arcs and pitfalls. So, we've got a lot in the hopper today. I do not have a hard out today. We may have to move this around in future weeks. I'm going to have some standing meetings that are going to take place on Tuesday afternoons. So I may be adjusting the schedule slightly. That will take effect next week. So we'll let you know kind of towards the end of the week what's going on there. So, those are our topics. There's a lot to look at, a lot to take in. It's a little bit enigmatic, is it not? Shiny Poke Epic asks, is a dragon eye a good reagent? That depends upon your DM, I guess. It seems like a good reagent, but it also seems like something that will be difficult to find or purchase or steal from its current owner. That's probably what makes it a good reagent. So there we go. All right. What are our exciting announcements that we have today? Number one, what's the biggest difference about this season versus last season? Guess what, everybody? This season, you get to watch me prep on Tuesdays. You get to watch me recap on Thursdays. And on Wednesdays, you get to watch the game. That's right. I will be streaming all of this season's content on Wednesday nights. It's our new D&D 5 show. It's called Ironkeep Chronicles. We have a fantastic cast composed of Amy Vorpahl and Havana Mahoney and Gaurav Galati, whose birthday it is today. Wish him a happy birthday if you happen to be on Twitter at the XG. So that is and Eric Reichert, not to be dismissed or underestimated, the fine Mr. Eric Reichert. whose birthday it is not today. So that's our cast. Those are our 4 players. I'm excited about that. I will be DMing. Shocker. And we're, I'm not sure what sort of arc we're looking at. If we're looking at 10, 12 weeks, we don't like to do things in a huge, like, there's no foreseeable end type of fashion at Saving Throw Show. We're trying to get things into kind of like manageable chunks and seasons. So that's what I think. I think we'll probably do 10 or 12 weeks. We're going to get that when we start looking for arcs and pitfalls. We're going to start talking about how we manage toward doing a 10 or 12 week season. So that's the most exciting thing. So Ironkeep Chronicles. That is the name of the show. It's tomorrow night. It's at 8 Pacific. We are going to, as you can see, do session 0. We're going to do a character building session. This is by no means a necessary thing in order to start Tales of the Yawning Portal. I did kind of poll the players, and they all want to start at first level, so that's one thing. However, this is something that I've done before in Adventurers League, and it's something that I feel like pays off far more than just diving right into, okay, I've made my character, let's sit down and just wham, start slamming dice out and let's play. So let's talk about what session 0 is, how session 0 works, and what that is. But that's Ironkeep Chronicles. If you have questions about it, more will be revealed as I speak, and not everything about it has been decided. So I might need some of your help and input in crafting this thing. I have a preliminary set of chat rewards that are both cash donations, a mix of cash donations, or XP. So there's things that if you want to donate XP, you can trigger off. There's things that if you would like to donate and support the show, you can make that happen too. But we have sort of tweaked things based on experience with the way things worked previously, and my goal is to give you guys a chance to interact and support the show without necessarily encouraging a ton of, boy, how would I describe it? Sort of pull the lever on the pit trap kind of story intrusion, right? So an example of that would be, the party's kind of flummoxed, they're not sure what to do, they're kind of dilly-dallying around, and chat will, pull the lever on, and this happened a while back, but it'd be like, let's start a fight, boom, and so a fight breaks out. If that doesn't make narrative sense in the moment, then those options will be far more limited in the future. But I have to talk through all of this with Dom to make sure that he's on board with it, but I think you'll like it. You'll still definitely get to influence the game and influence the players, and I think I've got some fun ideas for you around how chat can participate in the action of what's going on and support the players or perhaps hinder the players. Yeah, so more details about that. None of the chat reward stuff is going to apply this week, right? We're just feeling our way around. So don't look for it tomorrow. Maybe some limited things will get released, but we can talk more about it. We can talk more about it in the recap show if you guys want to talk about it in the recap show next week after next week's session. So think about that. Just know that I've got some things planned for you, and it will be different than what it has been in previous seasons. So it's a new show. It's a new chance to update what we're doing, or what I'm doing with this session. So, all right. I'm not sure I've got these in the order that I want them to be, but let me explain how tomorrow night is going to, what the premise of tomorrow night is and how it's going to work. So what I like to do before I start a new season of Adventurers League, generally speaking, is I like to get the table together and then have a session. If I know all of the players, like last season I didn't know all the players, so I gave them a quiz, a little player handout quiz of what's sort of to help kind of silo them into what their play style was. But if I know all the players and I have a pretty good idea of their play style, what I like to do is I like to do a session 0 character building session that is very rules light, that is very low powered, that is really focused on helping the players create or at least guide them towards interesting PCs that have, you know, an engaging set of character attributes, and I mean that in terms of like their character traits, not their stats, that have a little bit of history together, that have some relationships together. Really, it's a character building exercise that focuses on character in terms of like the character within the story, not character as in I am a first level paladin, I have these spells, these cantrips, I carry this equipment, etc., etc., etc. So I like to do a first session 0. It's not even the first session. It's a session 0 that really encourages players to create evocative characters and give them evocative character traits, right? I talked myself in circles around that one a little bit, but how? Oh, smart. Okay, great, Tom. How do you do this? So first of all, I want to just revisit that this is extremely low powered, somewhat gritty, but it is not based on D&D, essentially. I get away from D&D for the first session. I focus on something very rules light that is very quick and has a fairly common level of failure and interesting failure attached to it, right? So you could run Fate, you can't really run Dungeon World because it's class-based, right? So this is I want a classless system that does not like is kind of a little bit like removed from Dungeons and Dragons. That's what I like to run. So let's just cut right to it, right? So what I have done previously is I have enhanced or deployed a game by John Harper called Wildlings, which is a game that he created right around like, I want to say like 2010, 2011. It might have been even as late as 2014. And it was unfinished. He never finished it. So the downside to it is it was never finished. Somebody else took it over, kind of with John's blessing, and put some polish on it and things like that. He still has the base PDF of the game, which is literally 3 sheets of paper up on his website. But here's the important thing. The basic premise of it is that you are teenagers, okay? You have been away from your village for whatever reason. Everybody went off to fight off some invasion. And when you got back, a child had been kidnapped from the village and taken off into the wilderness. And your job, because you're the only competent people who are, you know, have any sort of combat prowess or ability with a sword, even though it's your ability is kind of nascent and emerging and not particularly, you're not skilled with a sword, you just happen to have one for whatever reason or whatever. But you are literally at the sort of the birth of your emergence into adolescence, into young adulthood. And your job is to go and find whatever monster or whatever kidnapped this child and see if you can rescue the child. So that's the basic premise of Wildlings. And we'll talk about the mechanics more in a little bit, but here's what really sets it apart in my mind, what makes it a great Session 0, is because it focuses on the fact that you are teenagers. You're just coming out of your teens. Maybe you're still 16, 17. You're just coming into your young adulthood. You're on the verge of becoming the person that you are going to be, right? You're at the end of your formulative stages, your formulative stage. And so what I love about that, as I pointed out in the bullet points here, is that there is the amazing potential for teen drama whether it's teen drama between the player characters or in reaction to the NPCs or the, whatever, the old man villagers who are like, you have to save Tristan, go find Tristan, whatever it is, right? Or reaction to being put in a combat situation. Here's why that's important, is it gives you the opportunity to play a character that is not heroic, but has the potential to become heroic, right? So you are not... in D&D, it's so easy to go, oh, I served 10 years in the army, and I've seen, to play right out of the gate, kind of play a little bit of that jaded warrior who's seen it all, or has experience in the world, or whatever it is. And what I like about this premise is you are a young person who's going to maybe have to kill something for the first time. How do you grapple with that? Or you get mad at your friends, but you're teenage mad, right? You're not like, teenage anger is loud and blustery and intense, and then the squall blows through and it's over, right? Like, it's tropical weather. Whereas adult anger is, I don't know, it's sort of like a field that's, or a river that's slowly being poisoned. It can just kind of like accumulate and accumulate and accumulate. And the acts that follow from adult anger can either be very specific and sudden and cruel, or they can be very long and slow burning and insidious and calculated and malicious, right? So what I love about playing in, with that idea, or playing in that character space of our characters are not fully formed, or they're not completely rational adults. They don't know a lot. They're not competent. They're often overwhelmed by what's in front of them. They're often frustrated by the people around them. They don't have the skills or the reasoning to deal with their friends' problems, their own problems, the problems of the world. And I just love that sort of teen drama, playing it as an adult, where things that should have no stakes are super high stakes, things that are super high stakes freak you out, all of that sort of stuff, right? Yeah, Flackwell makes a point that adult anger can definitely end up in somebody being dead, especially in Dungeons and Dragons, where it's a game of everybody has a sword. I'll just draw on him. Oh, that guy insulted me. I'll cut him down. Like, that's a very common thing. That's a common way to approach an NPC in a bar, right? First of all, if you're a teenager, if your character is a teenager, being in a bar is going to be an overwhelming experience. It might be the greatest thing in the world. It might be intimidating. You might be embarrassed, ashamed, or whatever. But you're not going to be comfortable in that environment. And that's going to inform how you react to NPCs who insult you, what happens. It puts a whole different perspective. So I just love the idea of putting the PCs in this sort of crucible of emotion, and letting and then throwing all the different spices in there, and then cooking them off until you get a character like at the core kernel of your character. And then what we will do at the end of the session is like kind of take away, like, here's what we learned about each character, how they relate to each other, who backstabbed whom, who's buddy buds, who was betrayed, like, and I'm not saying those things are going to happen, but those things have the potential to happen. We get down to the end, and then we go, all right, next week we're going to flash forward 10 years. You decide how much you still know each other. You've all come back together in 10 years. You've all come back together, or you've stayed together in 10 years, right? Now make your character your first level D&D character. So make your Elven Ranger who has the whatever, blah, blah, blah. You know, like, let's go, then we go into the D&D 5 world of stats and hit points and, you know, binary success and all of that sort of stuff, right? But you're informed by what happened that previous week. Your relationship to the other characters has been molded or guided by the experience that you had in that, you know, quote unquote 10 years previously type of a character building session. So it's not about XP, it's not about gaining power, it's not about getting treasure, it's about being someone who's inept, who's faced with overwhelming odds to complete a relatively high stakes mission, and then how they perform under that kind of pressure, and then how that sheds light on who they are and what they're like and how they relate to the other party members. So now you can use that information to help create a better character and put the mechanics on top of it of whatever you want to play. Okay, you want to play somebody who's you want to play a warlock or a sorcerer or a wild sorcerer or whatever it is. Fine. So that's the premise. That's the premise of tomorrow night's game, and that the spotlight is on the teen drama. It is not on combat, character abilities, competency. You're not there to kick ass. You're there to find out what you might be good at someday and where you fail. So that's where we are with that. Now, our next item on the agenda. So let me just pop a link here in chat. For those of you who are curious about the game that I'm talking about. As I said, it's called Wildlings. It's by John Harper. That's the PDF. It is, like I said, literally, well, I'm sorry, it's 5 pages. It's 5 pages. But one of those pages is a character sheet, and one of those pages is a title sheet. So really, let's be honest, it's 3. This is the whole, like, that's the whole game, you guys. That's it. Now, I've played this before. And those of you who are longtime viewers of Disorganized Play know that I love nothing better than to fiddle around and hack rules and add new subsystems and add different elements that change the way the game works and all that sort of fun stuff, right? As my wife is all too happy to point out, I have almost crippling inability to avoid hacking and tinkering with rules. I love adding stuff. I love adding cards. I love adding coins, extra die rolls, all that kind of garbage, right? But one of the other things that my wife brought me around to is a friendly little game we call Dungeon World. Many of you, I'm sure, are familiar with it. I've run some sessions of it. If you've ever played anything powered by the Apocalypse World, the Sprawl, Dungeon World is maybe, you know, the most popular version of that system. In Dungeon World, they have a thing called bonds. Bonds are kind of like Mad Libs for character relationships, okay? I have some here that I made up. So what you do, I wish that I had had time to drop this into the Dropbox, but I have not. So what this is, it is a statement that includes a blank, and that blank is supposed to be filled in by somebody else's character. So if I'm filling this thing out, I would pick one, and I would write in another character's name. So let's say that I'm playing Epper. I'm playing Epper, right? And Epper is, let's just say he's a youth kind of like from the wrong side of the tracks. He's been in trouble a lot. He has a tendency to maybe kind of do the old 5-finger discount on stuff. He's known as the village bad boy, right? Epper. So, one of the bonds that I might pick is, I stole something from blank's house and I've never had the guts to admit it. Okay, well this sounds something very much like my character do. I stole something from somebody's house. And so I would pick somebody else. I stole something from Texas Devon's house, and I've never had the guts to admit it. Like, whoever Texas Devon, give us a character name, and you can play along with us in the chat. But the point being, like, we go around the table, and your job is to fill in somebody else's name, and that helps develop the relationships between the party. There's inherently a power dynamic here. I stole something from Texas Dev. I'm still waiting for your character name. I can't believe. Grob. I stole something from Grob's house, and I've never had the guts to admit it. Okay, well, just in that statement, I know that there's something intimidating about either Grob or Grob's house. Maybe Grob comes from an upper-class family, or a more powerful family in the village. Maybe his dad is the village chief or whatever. At the table, we can discuss that and decide upon that. We don't have, I as the DM don't have to be the sole bearer of all of the facts about the game world, especially because it's a one-shot session, right? Why over-prep this? Let's create the world together for this one session. That you know, then we're going to fast forward 10 years. A whole bunch of stuff could have changed in 10 years. That's the beauty of going into this like teenage thing, is if you don't like what happens, well, there's 10 years, you know, there's a 10-year fast forward. Yeah, maybe he was the up-and-coming young chieftain's son who had the world on a string, and then 5 years later, he got viciously mauled by an owl bear and nearly lost the use of one of his legs, and he's felt like there's been sort of a curse hanging over him ever since that attack, right? So, but the important thing here is there's a power dynamic. I stole something from Grob's house. I've never had the guts to admit it. Why? Why can't I admit it? Am I ashamed? Am I intimidated? Do I know that there would be bad consequences? But now, you know, Grob has something kind of, or Grob doesn't have something over me, because Grob may not know. Grob may have no idea that I stole something from the house. Maybe I got away with it. But it's one of those secrets, like, you got away with it. You got to carry that secret. So those are some basic bonds that I use to help establish relationships and power dynamics around the table. And Dungeon World does a great job of these. In Dungeon World, they actually have a mechanical effect, right? Like when you're trying to help someone, your bond actually, the number of bonds that you have with that person adds to their potential success. I'll give you some other example bonds here, and then we'll move on. My parents took in blank as a young orphan. No one talks about what happened to their parents. Okay, that's pretty tough, right? Blank talks back to adults when I dare not. I find it kind of thrilling. 2 winters ago, blank and I accidentally set fire to the village granary. Nothing's been the same since. So one of the things that I like about this is it's kind of vague, right? Nothing's been the same since. Well, that's inspirational. Nothing's been the same since. Oh, yeah. Nothing's been... Like, it gives you a place to start pinning specifics to it. I don't think it's good play to just stick with, oh, nothing's been the same since, and not give it any more details. But I like that it's open-ended enough that it gives you room to fill in the details. What else is on here? So one thing I want to, like, I stole and adapted some of these from Dungeon World, right? I want to be clear about one thing if you're going to go writing your own bonds, because they are fun to write, and I wrote some custom ones for Storm King's Thunder, and I may write some new custom ones for Tales from the Yawning Portal. I just have not decided about that piece of it. But I'm definitely going to use these in this session. One thing I want to caution you about is creating bonds that are either competitive or intrusive on another character. Okay? A very classic example of that is like one of the cleric bonds is something like so-and-so is a heathen. I have taken it upon myself to show them the true faith. That can be really, like, played the wrong way, it can be a real a-hole move and it can become very tiresome, especially if the person who's the target of that bond does not want to go along with it, is not, like, if they resist the attempted conversion by the cleric or whatever, they're not into it, they're doing their own thing, they have a stronger character concept that they would rather pursue, then it becomes kind of this annoying, it becomes an annoying intrusion upon the way that they've chosen to play their character. Now, by the same token, it could flip around and easily just be a fun bit where the cleric is always like, well, you know, Moradin clearly projected you there. Yeah, he sure did. Thank God Moradin's light is shining down upon me. You know, so they can play it in a fun and friendly way, but it can also has a potential for getting out of hand where one player starts riding the other player and it kind of crosses a line in terms of getting to play your own character in the game space, right? So I believe when you're writing these, make sure that you don't include any that define a specific or coercive relationship. You know, so one of them that's defined here is my parents took in blank as a young orphan. No one talks about what happened to their parents. Okay, that definitely does define a very specific relationship. It does not define a coercive one, where I'm compelled, you know, one character is compelled to obey the other one. One character is explicitly indebted to the other one, etc. So you're not looking for like a master-servant type of relationship. Like big brother, younger brother can be fine because there's all types of different, you know, big brother, younger brother type of relationships. But, you know, boss, employee, master-servant, lord and liege, those types of things have an explicit power dynamic that unless you have players who are signed off on it or who can see a kind of, who agree to it, who can perceive the potential mischief that can be played within that relationship, you have to be very careful with those. So those are some starter bonds. I'll try and put this up into the Patreon folder or into the general folder later once I get off the stream, hopefully before tomorrow. So that is that. Those are some starter bonds. I highly encourage you to use bonds in your game, especially for a character building session. It really gets the thing that I find is like people start talking about their character and they go, oh, okay, well you said that, huh? Well, what if okay, blank gave me a fine fur cap for Winter's Fest. I just gave them a couple of venison sticks. I'm not sure what's happening. Huh. Like, oh, okay, well, maybe my character has a crush on your character, or your character has a crush on me. I don't know what's going on there. So, take a look at bonds. I'll try and give you some example bonds, but it's something that I love, especially in a character, to really like help define relationships and dynamics that are not sanitized or let me just say sterile in terms of we're old adventuring buddies. Okay, that sounds like it's not a particularly sterile relationship, but what does that really mean? Okay, here's the thing. We're old adventuring buddies. Great, that doesn't evoke a lot for me, okay? Blank and I once got lost and spent a terrifying night in the woods. Well, now that's got inspiration attached to it. That evokes something. I can make up a story around the terrifying night we spent in the woods when we got lost. That says a lot more to me about our adventuring career than, oh, we're old buddies, we go way back. That doesn't mean anything. It's too vague, right? So you can definitely, as James V points out, you can definitely play a master-servant relationship in a subversive way. So you can play those explicit power dynamics in a subversive way. But most players don't go with that right out of the gate. Oftentimes it's something that needs to be suggested. Instead, they're just going to be taken aback like, why do I have to work for him? And so that means I have to do everything he says? So be careful of those types of relationships. Not saying they can't be successful, but you have to have your players have to sign off on it and kind of see the potential for what it is, rather than like feeling burdened by it. All right, so let's just talk briefly about how Wildlings works. And I'm going to talk about how I've hacked Wildlings here, right? So I didn't print off the basic character sheet, which I should have. But the core mechanic behind Wildlings is that you have 6 different totem animals, for lack of a better term, or spirit animals, let's just call them that, right? Wolf, boar, owl, snake, stag, and then your warrior. No, you're right. You just have 5. Yeah, your warrior die goes into something, right? I'd have to look at. Let me look at the rules again. It's been a while since I dragged this thing out. So how do we do this? All right. Yeah. So there are 5 spirit animals: wolf, boar, owl, stag, and snake, right? You have 5 different dice: a d4, a d6, a d8, a d10, and a d12. So you assign each of those to one of the animal spirits, right? Now, each of these animal spirits is essentially sort of a little skill bucket, if you will, right? Wolf is used when you track or hunt or you go into danger. Boar is used when you try to resist or hold steadfast against something, or you show aggression. Owl is used when you watch and listen, or when you try to implement a clever plan. Snake is used when you sneak around or hide in stillness, or you're looking for a way in or try to escape. And then finally, stag is used when you act with swiftness or grace, and you open your heart to the wild. So in, I don't even know if I want to say canonical Wildlings, because the game's not finished. Like, I consider it an ongoing work in progress. But you assign your d4, d6, d8, d10, d12 to each of those 5, to one of those, each of those 5 spirit animals, and then they inform what your character is like. So the way it works is when you try anything that's attached to that spirit animal, so let's say that you're trying to sneak or hide in stillness, that's a snake. The snake spirit governs that portfolio of abilities. Then you roll the die that's appropriate for that you assign to that animal. So let's just say that you assigned a d6. If you roll, no matter what your dice are, if you roll a 4 to 6, you get 1 outcome. That's essentially sort of like a base level of success. If you roll a 7 to 9, you get 2 different outcomes. So that's an even greater level of success. And if you roll a 10 plus, you get 3 different outcomes. So you're really good at that. But if you get a 3 or lower, something bad happens. Something bad happens a la Dungeon World, where it's not defined what it is. You don't take damage necessarily. It's just something bad happens. The GM gets to make a move against you, against somebody else in the party, against the scenario, the situation, escalate the threat, harm innocents, raise the stakes, introduce an additional threat, all that sort of stuff, right? So if you look at this, this is very sort of prototypical for John Harper's games. You can kind of see other games like Danger Patrol kind of spinning out of this particular idea, right? But it's definitely like there's success, or the GM gets to determine what the failure entails. Now, you got to look at your sliding scale of power. If you assigned a D6 to your snake spirit animal, 50% of the time you're going to be successful, but 50% of the time you're going to fail. Something bad is going to happen. Okay? Like that's the way this is, that's the way the odds are rigged. And that's one of the reasons that I like this as positioned as a teen drama game, is that you are not competent. You are not a heroic warrior. You're very bad at things, and bad things are going to happen as a result of your well-intentioned efforts, right? Some players find this frustrating. Oh, 3 is it's too much. Like, we can't do anything. Yeah, you're teenagers. That's what happens. You suck. What do successful outcomes look like? So the game that we're talking about is Wildlings by John Harper. Here's another link to it if you want to take a look at it. If you're also looking for a T-drama game, I would recommend Bubblegum Shoe by Evil Hat. But that's a detective game. It's not quite suited to our heroic fantasy genre that we've got going on here. At least not directly, but it can be hacked to apply if you put a little time and thought into it. So what are our successful outcomes? Our successful outcomes, you get to choose from a list of, are they adjectives or adverbs? At any rate, your successful outcomes, you get to choose one of the following words and apply it to whatever happens as a result of your action. You can succeed boldly, carefully, cleverly, forcefully, helpfully, impressively, precisely, thoroughly, quickly, or quietly. Okay? So if you roll a 4 to 6, you get to pick one of those words and apply it to whatever the outcome of your action is. If you get a 7 to 9, you get to pick 2 of those words and apply them to the outcome of whatever your action and intent was. And if you roll a 10 or higher, which can only happen on 2 of the dice, you get to pick 3 of those words and apply them to the result of your action, right? So this is not a game of I burn down hit points and I hit a specific armor class and all that sort of stuff, right? This is very oogie schmoogie, story gamey type of, okay, I succeed forcefully. I kick the door so hard that the hinges burst at the seams, go flying off, and there's little shards of wood that go splintering and clattering across the floor. So it's definitely an interpretive system as compared to one that has well-defined mechanical outcomes. Okay, so that's the core mechanic of Wildlings. There's an issue here in that I think from having played it a couple times before, it bears a little further fleshing out, especially for people who are used to playing Dungeons and Dragons. There's no magic system, for one thing. And some of the other skills are missing. Well, what does that mean? Let's take a look. This I actually did. This is one of the reasons I was late. I did actually prepare a slide for this. So tomorrow night we're going to be playing a system that I call Beastlings. So instead of the 5 spirit animals, I have 5 spirit monsters that I have chosen to represent your statistics pool, your attributes for your character, right? So these are kind of iconic mythical monsters that have domain over different different groups of activities in the game, right? So some of them are just straight up reskins of the existing wildlings things. Like the Minotaur clearly is the wolf, right? Track, hunt, embrace danger. Okay. I like to have 2 things that are very like specific and approachable. Tracking, hunting, I know exactly what those are. Embracing danger, that's a little more amorphous. How would that apply? That's a little more evocative. Okay, so I've got 2 things that are specific, and then I got 1 thing that's kind of like, I don't know what that means, but I have room to interpret it. Troll, resist, hold steadfast, bear fangs. Unicorn is the equivalent of the stag. Swiftness, act with swiftness, act with grace. Open your heart. Well, what does that mean? I don't know, but like it seems like a cool thing. Like I like the idea of you open your heart. Does that mean you become one with nature, or you try to embrace or empathize with an NPC? What does that mean? But it means something, right? It's almost a poetic type of phrase. Very descriptive. I can't nail down what it is, but that's okay. I love stuff that's open to interpretation. So imp is the version of the snake, right? Sneak, hide, enter, or escape. The golden owl, or the clockwork owl, as I like to call it. Watch, listen, construct, or implement a plan. Now, these last 4 are brand new, right? The Sphinx. Search, reason, decipher a lesson. Okay? Now, I just want to pause for a moment on the Sphinx and talk about something. Number 1, we're so used to having a search skill in Dungeons & Dragons that the lack of it in Wildlings is a stumbling block for D&D players. So I had to put it in. I had to put in a thing like, what's a search skill? You know, what give them a place where they can go, I'm good at searching for stuff, or I'm bad at searching for stuff, whatever the case may be, but give them an avenue, because I know during the game it's going to come up like, oh, I want to search the campsite. Well, now I've got a stat that I can go to. Okay, roll your Sphinx, make a Sphinx roll. The other thing that I want to point out here, so that's important, to have some of those canonical D&D skills available in this game, because it's a precursor game to a D&D 5 game, and because the players are all most familiar with D&D, I have to have a little bit stronger parallels in here. I'm very specific about the wording of this last thing. Decipher a lesson. I wanted to have a skill that was like draw on knowledge type of thing. But they're teenagers. They don't know anything. Okay? I didn't want there to be like, I'm good at book learning type of skill. That's not what I wanted. But there's something about decipher a lesson which leads you to, oh, I remember the one time our, master told us about, or, old Lady Willikers over at the well, who always seems to be spouting some sort of boring lesson. She told us about the time that the rabbit and the hare raced, or whatever. Like, decipher a lesson implies that you have received training, but you have not mastered training. That's the important distinction with decipher a lesson. Oh, now the insight is coming to me. You're not exerting your competence or your knowledge. You're in sort of real time, in the moment, realizing, oh, okay, okay, I get it. Yeah, this is like that time when, right? So it's the same skill, right? It is the same thing. Okay, I want to know something about, Oh, yeah, I found this old book on the planets. Like, what does that mean? Well, now it's decipher a lesson instead of you were taught for 7 years about the cosmology of the planes and how things, the ellipses and orbits of the various heavenly bodies. That's not something a teenager has a grasp on. This Wildlings is assumed to take place in sort of like a backwater, small, low knowledge, not a very civilized place. Let's put it that way. So that's something with Sphinx. All right. Similar with a dragon, I wanted to have something that was sort of like a perception skill and sort of like that expressed wisdom. Okay? But how does a teenager express wisdom? In Bubble Gumshoe, it's sort of they have a skill that's a version of like relating. I don't remember if it's called adult face or adult talk, but it's basically your ability to carry authority and seem reasonable to your elders. Like adults take you seriously, as opposed to most teenagers. Adults don't take them seriously. This is kind of a similar type of skill pool, right? So, counsel, either one of your fellow players or something like that, like show some wisdom. Discern, this is sort of your perception, or not so much not like a search perception, but it's more of a discern is more of a discern truth from fiction, discern a lie or someone misleading you from the truth, right? So that's really what I mean by discern, is that's sort of your insight thing. But I didn't want to use insight. Like I don't like to use straight up D&D skills as a parallel, because I want it to be a little fuzzy. I want it to be a little bit out of the character's common knowledge, and I wanted it to make people think about, like, what does that mean? I also wanted to give myself a little wiggle room, like, that's more of a thing where you're trying to discern what's happening as opposed to a search check. So that's something to think about. Invoke the elders. What that means is call on their authority, call on their wisdom, to be able to harness the power of the adult world in a way that a teenager wouldn't necessarily normally do. But some of it is like, I'm going to tell dad on you. That's sort of like, that's also what invoke the elders can mean. Don't try to get out of line. Don't break the codified rules of our culture, or I'm going to impose their penalties on you. So invoke the elders is, it's sort of your wisdom stat, but it has a different skew on it, right? It's like, it's the adult world kind of shining its authority, its influence into your teenage world. So that's the dragon. The djinn is your charisma-based set of skills: charm someone, deceive someone, affix a price. Now, what I kind of like about this is also sort of open-ended in that, like, affixing a price, there can be a price to things that don't cost money, right? You're not the, you're teenagers, you don't have cash. So affixing a price, maybe that means you can barter with somebody. Maybe you do have something that you have something valuable you can trade, or you can perform a service or whatever. But affix a price, it also feels like a very djinn kind of, like, what I like about that totem monster or that spirit monster or that portfolio, whatever it is it has a little bit of danger and mischief attached to it, right? The 3 wishes that the djinn gives you, they will always go bad somehow. It's the curse of the monkey's paw type of thing. So this whole thing of affix a price, well, okay, everything comes at a price, everything comes at a cost. I love that kind of that kind of idea, that kind of influence. And then finally, the other problem with Wildlings is there's zero magic system. There's not a magic system. There's no way to explicitly try to invoke magic or perform magic or anything like that. And, you know, we have characters who are going to become magic users or clerics or wield some sort of either divine or arcane power, right? And so I want them to have the ability to try it and then succeed in, you know, succeed and or fail in ways that are interesting. So I thought about naming this the Spider Queen, although that's very, very drow oriented, and I don't really want to. Unfortunately, like, I love the image of the Spider Queen who sits in the shadows and who is responsible for sort of the portfolio of the mysterious, unseen forces of magic, but it's so heavily been, you know, it's so heavily associated with drow. I just can't call it the Spider Queen, so I have to do something else. But right now I just got it associated with the spider. So these abilities are way more amorphous. See the unseen, tap the weave, which is the weave of magic. So try to tap, you know, magic, try to create magic essentially. And then call into shadow. And to me, that is bargaining with otherworldly forces who are beyond your knowledge and ken, and who probably should not be bargained with. So this is Beastlings. This is the system that I'm planning to deploy tomorrow night. So it's like Wildlings. I'm going to have to add more dice, right? So I've got 3 more things. I'll probably add a D6 and a D8 and maybe a D10, but it's more likely that I'll just add. You know, I don't know. I might do 2D8 and a D6. I might do 2D6 and a D8. I don't want the characters, I want the characters to fail. I don't want them to become too competent at the thing that they're best at. So I don't want there to be a ton of overlap between these things. I don't think there is, but I'm going to have to add some dice. But that's about it, right? So that's a pretty solid little system. I'm going to try and create a character sheet for this thing and see where we can go with it. But I really like this idea, and I think as we go along, you're going to see this portfolio of abilities get carried forward into the campaign. That's my plan, or my intention anyhow, is to involve some mechanics that will carry this idea that there is, you know, a spirit that watches over these little sort of buckets of activity. Carry that forward into the actual D&D portion of the game. So, Imp is a thing. There are 9 listings, right? Imp is sneak, hide, enter, or escape. That's in the middle on the left. Yeah, so I might need to add 4 dice, right? Because there's 5. Might need to add 4 more dice. So that's the thing. Imp takes over snake. So troll is boar. Okay. Minotaur is wolf. Golden owl is the owl. The imp is the snake. The unicorn is the stag. Okay. The sphinx, dragon, spider, and djinn are all things that I've added. So yes, I will have to add 4 dice in order to make this work. So that leads me to probably go a D6, 2D8, and a D10. But I might go 2D6, 2D8, just to keep things tipped in the realm of incompetence a little bit. I don't know. That's where we're at. Okay, so our last couple of things that we started late. I'm going to try and wrap this up in the next 5 to 10 minutes. Because I don't like to go more than an hour, as you all well know. But, musings on the premise. So, the premise is called the Ironkeep Chronicles. What can I tell you? I haven't expressly decided some major facts about what the basis of the game is going to be next week. I honestly have to come up with a short mini adventure arc that we can play tomorrow night. But with Wildlings, it's so open-ended that it doesn't take a lot of notes. There's not stats. I don't have to come up with stats. I just have to come up with a variety of challenges and maybe a little map or whatever it is. That's all fine. So the essential premise that I'm working with right now, and which is going to be a work in progress, and which you may have some input on or whatever, is that there is this floating tower or building known as the Ironkeep. Okay? It has had many masters over the course of the past X hundred years. Okay? I think that, you know, and some of this is definitely inspired by those old Dragonlance adventures where there were floating castles and things like that. Not that Dragonlance has a monopoly on the idea of a floating fortress, but I love the idea of a floating fortress, and I want to explore that concept and where it goes and things like that. I also love the idea of the PCs having a place that they can call their home base, that they can then update and renovate and call their own and etc. Right? So that place is called the Ironkeep, and what I have not decided is if it's just something that the PCs are going to either inherit or take over, or if it's big enough that maybe there's a small community there. But I definitely like the idea that it's floating and mobile and has the potential to go places. Now, I don't think it has, right? I think it's been stuck in the same place for the past, whatever, 250 years. I like the idea that it's something weird from ancient history that people now just take for granted as being kind of useless. Yeah, it floats 50 feet up in the air. It's a great defensive place, but nobody's attacked this part of the country in 2 centuries. It's really more just a pain in the butt because you got to hump your way all the way up that ladder. Anything that you want, you have to, crank up via a crane, etc., etc., etc. So I like the idea that it's an ancient place that was maybe once built with a specific purpose or had a particular set of owners, but is now sort of fallen into disrepair, and a lot of the history of it is forgotten. And on its face, it seems cool, but then by the time you're done with it, it's kind of just a pain in the butt. It's like living at the top of the tower, right? So that's one of the deals. So Pouladin is on to something here when they say do a whole bunch of puzzles to figure out how to unleash its potential. Right. So the premise that I'm looking at deploying here, because we have to look at what Tales of the Yawning Portal is, right? Tales of the Yawning Portal is a set of 7 dungeons. We may or not, we most likely will not play all of them, right? But I think we'll at least play 2. I wouldn't mind playing 4, but it kind of depends upon how long the adventures take and whether all the players are on board for that many dungeon crawls and a variety of other factors, right? Because ultimately, enjoyment of the players has to be a factor that's considered. And, of course, enjoyment of you guys in the chat. But the premise that I'm looking at deploying is that there have been 9 various owners of the, or main owners of the Ironkeep. And each of them, essentially, when they became a lord of the keep, they crafted a special key that then that allowed them to take command of the keep, but also to create expansions and renovations and different wings and that sort of thing. So in my vision of this thing, there are either potentially hidden doors or there maybe just be sections where there's a blank wall and clearly there's something there, or maybe there's a barred wall that, you know, or doorway or portal that nobody seems to know how to activate, or maybe there's something that doesn't even look like a portal. It turns out it is a portal. Essentially, either hidden or extra-dimensional wings to the castle, and that part of the party's incentive to adventure and a dungeon crawl is to find the different keys that open up different portions of the keep and unlock additional abilities, or at least just like reveal whole new sections of the keep that they didn't know was there, right? And so, hey Selinarke, thanks for dropping in. So, I think the premise here basically is, once you can take command of the keep and fly it around to different places, your job is to find or infiltrate the dungeon where one of the previous lords was slain and find either their remains or at least find the key that was stolen or whatever it was, right? So those are my musings on the premise. Like I said, the main thing I'm trying to decide is this place inhabited by people other than the players? Is it big enough that maybe there's like not really a village, but you know, maybe maybe a family lives there alongside, or maybe it's just abandoned and they take, you know, it's just a place where people go and screw around and they have, you know, maybe the town has a guard stationed at the top of it, but why? Because they're in the middle of nowhere and nobody's come to threaten them. So why would you go to all this work of posting a guard up there? It's a great resource, but if you don't need it, why would you use it, right? And that's how things like that fall into disrepair and disuse. Look at like abandoned castles around Europe. Well, guess what? We now have radar and fighter jets. We don't need, you know, a fort. Moving on to the next topic, one of the things I want to talk about, and I apologize for being like kind of on the edge of camera range here. It's a little bit better. Moving on to the next topic, looking for arcs and pitfalls. So one of the issues that I'm struggling with is if I forget what I'm going to say about something, somebody just remind me to say Tarask later on. So, James V says, what about the descendants of the last set of servants who are waiting for the new lords and ladies of the keep? I like that idea. What I really love is the idea of almost not descendants of the servants. I like the idea that there are either ghosts or there are magical servants, right? That, you know, yes, out of commission automatons or just unseen servants, but that are actually seen, you know, that actually like a step up from an unseen servant. So a ghostly presence that is not attached to a soul, but is a magical force that has a personality that they can interact with, but does not necessarily retain a ton of history or remember things, right? So I want there to be an air of mystery, and so I can't have somebody who has 100% reliable knowledge on what's happened. I'm thinking maybe there's like a map or something like that that leads them to, or a set of diaries that leads them from one locale to the other. But let's keep in mind, like speaking of arcs and pitfalls, in 10 to 12 weeks, we'll probably only play 2 dungeons. We'll probably only play 2 chapters out of this adventure. I don't see it moving faster than that, and that's fine. But then you can't have a ton of world building stuff attached to it. You know, you can't have an arc that goes across 4 or 6. You can't have an arc that leads up to Tomb of Horrors. You're not going to play all 7 chapters. You know, the Doom Vault is a massive chapter all by itself. So I think you could go in there and cherry pick that thing. But I think when I look for arcs, Sunless Citadel and Forge of Fury are deliberately tied together So I feel like I want to tackle those two first. Also, those are the low-level adventures. And everybody's like, I want to play low-level. So we're not going to power level people right up to level 8 or anything like that. I give them the opportunity to start at like 4th level, maybe 5th level. They're like, no, we want to start at 1st level. Okay, we're going to play grim and gritty, down and dirty. That's fine. Good. I'm glad. I like playing at that. There's a lot of drama at those levels, and that's fun. James V talks about a town of golems, but with talking and habits and skills and jobs. I think there is the potential. So one of the things, just to keep spinning on this premise a little bit, one of the things that I love is that you can give each of the lords of the keep a different personality. And so maybe one of them was like this gnomish clockwork artificer guy who, like, you know, and they open up the thing and turn the crank or whatever, and all of a sudden this whole wing of the castle comes to life and servants come popping out and like all that kind of stuff. So I think that's pretty, like, that's a cool idea, like that we can have a whole variety of worlds available to us, but within this keep. Right? And have it be reasonable and have them have a place to like learn and discover new mysteries, but also like make them their own and settle on them and that sort of stuff. So to me, that's one of the really like exciting kind of ideas, is that you can have, you start with this basic keep that just sort of seems like this broken down, lonely place, and then, you know, one day you raise the curtain and it turns out there's been this whole city that's been like churning away and like making alchemist fire or whatever it is for the past 250 years, and you're sitting on this huge store of alchemist fire, which is a little Game of Thronesy, but like is a really fascinating idea, right? So I like the idea that we have the opportunity to create these 9 different personalities who all have their own style that is slowly revealed through the course of the campaign, as opposed to walking in and, oh, you found the secret door, so therefore, boom, I know all this stuff is immediately available to you. I like it as a gradual unfolding of secrets, right? So that's part of the premise at work here. So arcs, you know, right now I think we get through those first 2 dungeons and see how it goes. I really am keen to run White Plume Mountain for this group, but I don't think we'll get to it within the 12 weeks, and I don't want to power level people up into it, and I'm not sure that's really... It's not within the scope of our first season of Ironkeep Chronicles, in my opinion. That doesn't mean that we can't get to it, but let's kind of find our way through the first 2 adventures before we get too deep into figuring out where White Plume Mountain figures in. Now, I think there's the potential here to add a couple of motivations or events or hooks that give the players a reason to keep going on these dungeon crawls apart from finding the keys, right? That might not be enough. So there's 2 things. One, I'm thinking like maybe there's some sort of distant war where your job is to find weapons for the king. You have been given the royal imperative to find powerful weapons that the army can use against the impending demonic invasion that's happening off to the north, or whatever, you know, whatever that conflict is. But you've been ordered / hired by the king to recover as many weapons, recover supplies. You know, you're the scavenging crew. They can't make them fast enough. It's worthwhile to go and, you know, we've located these storehouses of ancient weaponry, these ancient armories. Go there and get these things and then deliver them to us. So it's not just go and find treasure, but the clever cook here is then turn that treasure over to the king. Give that treasure away. So it's not strictly I'm amassing personal power. It's a mission for the greater good. Okay? That's one thing to think about. The other thing that I am considering, and I want to make this clear, that I think a pitfall of this adventure is that it's all dungeon crawls. So my players have made it very clear to me that they want to have a game that's about relationships and character development and interaction and, you know, real emotional bonds and growth. And, you know, Tomb of Horrors doesn't deliver that sort of thing, right? And there's not a, I mean, I think one of the challenges with this adventure is to really go in with that, you know, ultra fine carving chisel and, you know, chisel out, you know, really define those little bits of character interaction or potential NPC interaction. So I look at Sunless Citadel and I go, okay, I need to make sure that they don't go in on a murder rampage against the kobolds, because the kobolds are potential allies, and now the story is a whole lot more interesting when it's the party and the kobolds versus the awful goblins and the weird, creepy vampire halfling guy than it is of just murder our way through the dungeons until we get to the Gulthius tree, right? So that's something to keep in mind. So that I see as one of the pitfalls. One of the other recurring ideas I have come up with is that there might be some sort of something has awakened or has been called to the keep. And on a recurring basis, they know, like every new moon, a different monster is going to come and try and fight its way into the keep and steal whatever it is, the heart of the keep, the moonstone that powers the thing and keeps it in the air, or you know, the glyph, you know, absorb the glyph of power, whatever, eldritch might or whatever it is that keeps the thing aloft or ensorcels the thing or whatever. So now we have kind of this, we can set up sort of a tower defense sort of premise where they know they have 30 days to go into a dungeon and get out whatever, arm themselves with whatever goodies and things and contraptions that they can get. And then they fortify the keep and something comes in the night and attacks, right? So then we sort of like have this thing where we go out into the dungeon and explore and gain XP and gain power and gain equipment and gain knowledge. And then it's sort of bookended or framed by, and now it's the new moon, and here come the screaming hordes from Tartarus or whatever it is, right? So that's another potential arc that I could put on top of the adventure itself to really give us a little bit extra, purpose. It's still very hack and slashy, right? But you could potentially set it up as you have this settlement of villagers who live at the keep, and you need to protect them. And this thing is going to go after the innocents. It's going to start slaying the forces that inhabit the place and who are essentially under your protection. James V makes a suggestion. Maybe they could find a couple of kobold kids playing in order to give an entree into, like, maybe you shouldn't just murder kids, and maybe the kids will, if you return the kids, you can make friends with their parents, and they will explain what's going on, etc. I agree, that's an interesting idea. It's not a bad way to start. That's next week. I'm still kind of just like turning on. I'm still short-term focused on, I gotta get the session rolling tomorrow, and I have to do a few things to pull all of that session together. And I'm also not 100% decided on all of the premise. So I like these suggestions, but some of that stuff is going to come to me next Tuesday, as opposed to I really need to lay the groundwork for the greater campaign arc and things like that tomorrow. So I want to get some of the details about the Ironkeep nailed down before I tackle some of the specifics about how do I serve up this next portion of adventure. You know, one of the other things that I've considered is that the Sunless Citadel is the Ironkeep, but it's crashed. Or it's a wing of the Ironkeep that's crashed. And, like, if they can find the thing that reattaches it, it will, like, rise up out of the earth. I think that's a cool idea, too, although it's It's a little weird that then there's the area below it with all of the... we can talk about Sunless Citadel next week. But I've read through it, and it's not a self-contained keep. It's because it's been underground for a while. That means it's been modified. So, all right, ladies and gentlemen, I did not download the calendar for this week. I apologize for that. But that's what I got for this week. We went a little over an hour and 20 minutes. We've got plenty of time to spin on those ideas on Thursday, or come back to them on Tuesday. So you guys put it in the old noodle. Let's watch tomorrow night, see what happens. I'm really excited about this session. I think it's going to be really fun. I think it's going to be a huge change of pace in terms of what the players' expectations are and what they're used to, and how it's going to pay dividends the following week when we have our characters made and things like that. So I'm really looking forward to this, especially this first session of Beastlings, as it were. And I hope some inspirational stuff comes out of it. I hope some inspirational stuff has come up for you in terms of planning your game and planning a session 0 and trying to get some character building hooks built into, or built in prior to launching your Adventures League, or your first, your literal first D&D 5 session. So that's all I've got for today. I want to thank you guys all so much for joining us. We've got a ton of things going on at Saving Throw. I just got back on Saturday, so I don't even know what they are. So I'm not going to pretend that I do. But thank you so much for tuning in. It feels really good to be back, and I'm looking forward to really looking forward to streaming this game. I can't tell you all how frustrating it was to... it was... I love running Adventurers League, and I really felt like a debt that I had to repay to my game store for playing in 3 different seasons of Adventurers League as a player. Like, I had to pay them back by being a DM. And it was a completely worthwhile experience. But in terms of you folks in the chat understanding what was going on, I'm glad I don't have to recap what happened on Thursday. Like, you can go back to the VOD and watch it, or you can tune in live tomorrow night at 8 o'clock and join me. So, yeah, I'm really excited about being able to stream this next round of Adventurers League content. We're not going to run strictly Adventurers League rules. We are going to tweak things a little bit, and that'll be fun. So it's great to be back, and it's great to be launching this whole new show. I'm really excited about it. I know the players are really excited. Dom's really excited, and I can't wait to get into it. So please join me tomorrow night at 8 o'clock Pacific time. And until next time... thanks to Farquaad, thanks to all of our regulars for joining us. Thanks for having me back. And until next time, let's dungeon! Season 2, 100%! Booyah!